Okay, so have you seen this show, Adolescence, on Netflix?
Yeah, I just finished it actually last night.
It is so good, and everybody's talking about it, right?
Oh yeah, it's a huge hit, like #1 on Netflix, and the
Yeah.
critics are loving it.
It's really interesting, too, because it's this British crime drama, and it's from the minds of Jack Thorne and Stephen Graham.
Yeah, and you know what I think is so interesting about it is it's about this accusation against this 13-year-old kid, Jamie Miller,
Right?
and he's accused of stabbing a classmate.
Right. Yeah.
But it's not just like your typical whodunit kind of crime story. It's really using that as a jumping off point to explore all these other things.
Absolutely, and the way they structured it is just so different. It's only 4 episodes,
Right.
and each episode is filmed as one long take.
Yeah.
So it feels incredibly immersive, like you are right there
It's intense.
in the moment and, experiencing it along with the characters.
And it really makes you think about, how we watch things.
Huh.
Because when you don't have those cuts, it's a totally different viewing experience.
For sure.
Like, we're so used to being able to take a breath and, maybe the camera will change angles or something will shift. But here, you're just locked in.
Yeah, and you're locked in with the characters and experiencing the story in this really raw way.
I think it really adds to the ambiguity of, like, is he guilty or not?
Right.
Because you're right there with everybody judging at the same time.
Exactly. And that's the whole question of the series, right? Like, how did Jamie get here?
Yeah.
And each episode kind of looks at that from a different perspective.
It's like peeling back the layers of the onion a little bit.
Yeah. And one of the things I think is really interesting and timely is how the show really digs into the whole thing with teenagers and how their lives online and offline are so blurred now.
It's a really hard thing for, I think, especially adults to wrap their heads around.
Absolutely.
It's like, as a parent, are you supposed to be monitoring everything?
Right.
Where's the line? And I think the show does a really good job of just showing how messy it is.
It really does. And it doesn't shy away from that, like you're saying.
It's uncomfortable at times to watch.
It is, but I think that makes it more impactful and it makes you think about it more after you're done watching.
You're not going to forget it easily.
No, definitely not.
So, like, how does episode 1 start off?
So episode 1 starts off right away, like, bam, we're in it. And Jamie Miller is getting arrested at his home
Oh, wow.
the morning after the stabbing.
So, like, right in the thick of it.
Yes, and the camera is, like, right there with the police as they go through all the procedures,
Oh, it's just
like booking him, taking DNA, getting him a solicitor, talking about, the evidence they have. It's very procedural,
it feels very real.
very grounded.
Yeah.
And we meet his family right away in those really initial moments.
Oh, wow.
His dad, Eddie, is played by Stephen Graham.
Amazing actor.
So good. He's like this working class plumber, and he's just completely floored.
He's blindsided.
Yeah. And then there's his mom, Manda, and his older sister, Lisa. And they're just like in shock and disbelief, and, they're all just supporting Jamie.
You get the sense that it's a really tight-knit family unit.
Yeah.
So what about Jamie himself? What's he like?
Owen Cooper, who plays Jamie, is so good.
He's new. I haven't seen him in anything before.
Me neither, and he is so believable.
What's he like?
He's just like this kid who's, really upset. He's in tears constantly. He keeps calling for his dad, like in the police van.
Oh.
And they show a lot of shots from like the back of his head.
Yeah.
So he just seems very small and vulnerable, And it makes you really question, like, could this kid actually have done this?
Yeah, it's like that initial instinct to want to protect him.
Yes. And then you have Detective Inspector Bascom.
Okay.
He's played by Ashley Walters, and he's really good too. He has this kind of quiet authority,
Yeah, I like him a lot.
Yeah, and we kind of see a lot of the episode through his point of view.
So he's kind of like our way in.
Yeah, and he seems very competent, and he is just so sure that Jamie is guilty.
Oh, wow. So he's convinced.
Yes. But as the episode goes on, we start to get these little hints as to why he's so sure.
Okay, so they're kind of teasing us?
Yeah, it's like they're saying, hey, there's a reason for this.
Keep watching.
Yeah.
So what happens in episode 2?
Episode 2 is so different. It takes us completely out of that world of the arrest and the investigation.
Oh, okay.
And it puts us right in Jamie's school
It's a so different setting.
a few days later.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's like a total shift in tone.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we're now like trapped in this school
Yeah.
with D.I. Bascom and his partner, D.S. Frank,
Okay.
and they're interviewing all of Jamie's classmates, trying to understand what his relationship was like with the victim.
They're trying to piece together like the social dynamic.
Exactly. And the school itself feels so oppressive in this episode.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like really crowded and chaotic.
Makes sense.
And the students are all like on edge and agitated,
Yeah, after something like that happens.
And the teachers just seem so overwhelmed.
Like they don't know what to do.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how all the adults are kind of reacting to this situation.
Yeah, and it makes you think, too, about the support systems,
Absolutely, or the lack
for
thereof.
the kids.
Right.
Because something like that happening in a school is traumatic for everyone.
Exactly.
So it sounds like the school itself almost becomes a character.
It really does. And then we get this other layer added in because we find out that D.I. Bascom's own kid goes to the same school
Oh, wow.
and that he's bullied there and tries to avoid going.
So now it's personal.
Yes, and you can see as they're going through the school, in this one long take, Bascom's like getting more and more uneasy
Oh, interesting.
because not only is he, dealing with this case, but he's also now seeing this environment through the lens of his own kid's experience.
Yeah, that's got to be really tough.
And this episode also, I think, does a really interesting job of highlighting the disconnect between the adults and the teenagers, especially when it comes to their online lives.
Yeah, because that's a huge part of it now, right?
Yes, totally.
It's like this whole other world that a lot of adults don't really understand.
Yeah, the teachers seem clueless,
Yeah.
and the students just see right through them.
Yeah, they're like, you don't get it at all.
Right,
I bet it was hard for the writers even to portray that accurately.
right, because it's changing all the time.
It's like by the time the show comes out, it's almost out of date.
Yeah, there's this part where they're talking about the manosphere,
Okay.
and like D.S. Frank kind of gets it. She mentions Andrew Tate,
Right. He's like the poster boy for that whole thing.
but it's clear that she doesn't really get the nuances of it all.
And meanwhile, the kids are like living it.
Yes, they are using this stuff online in these really toxic ways to hurt each other.
It's almost like they're speaking a different language.
And that's really, I think, the scary part for a lot of adults. It's like we don't even understand the language they're speaking.
Yeah, you can't really help if you don't even know what's going on.
Exactly.
So then what about episode 3?
Episode 3 is my favorite.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people have said that this is like the standout.
It is, and it's mostly set in this detention facility.
Okay.
And it's this long interview between Jamie and a young psychologist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the whole thing is in one take.
So it's like we're in the room with them.
Yes. It is so intense.
And Owen Cooper, the actor who plays Jamie, you said was good before, but I bet he really gets to show off his chops in this one.
Oh, he is phenomenal in this episode.
What does he do?
He just goes through this whole range of emotions, He's like cheerful one minute, then angry, then confused, and then there are these moments where he's just so calculating.
Oh, wow. So it's really unsettling.
It is. And during the interview, he starts describing his online interactions with the victim,
Yeah.
and it's like so toxic.
Like what kinds of things are they saying?
Well, he talks about, how they would fight online, and it's just like this constant stream of horrible comments.
Ugh.
And then he talks about how this nude photo of the victim got leaked and was shared amongst some of the boys at school.
It just makes you think about, the consequences of that kind of thing,
Yeah, and the fact that it's become so normal.
which is the really scary part.
Yeah.
Like, have we become desensitized to it?
Right. And then he says this really awful thing about the victim's appearance.
Oh, no. What does he say?
He basically calls her flat-chested and says she's not his type.
Oh, God.
And then he admits that he asked her out.
Wait, what?
Yeah, after the photo was leaked.
So is he trying to take advantage?
It seems like it, and he says it's because he thought she'd be vulnerable.
That is just so disturbing.
It's really messed up, and the way the psychologist reacts is interesting, too.
What does she do?
She stays very calm and professional, but you can tell she's kind of thrown by it.
Yeah, I mean, how could you not be?
Right. And she just asks him this simple question.
What's that?
She says, I thought you said she wasn't your type.
Calling him out.
Yeah. And it makes him kind of backtrack, and you see the manipulation.
So he's not being genuine at all.
And then there's this other part where Jamie tries to get the psychologist to say if she thinks he's attractive.
Oh, God.
It's so uncomfortable.
It's like, what is he doing?
You don't know if he's trying to connect with her in this really messed up way or if he's trying to control the situation.
Right, like, does he actually want a connection, or is this just about power?
Exactly. And the episode never really gives you a clear answer.
It just leaves you hanging.
It does.
And I'm guessing that's intentional.
Yeah, for sure.
So I heard there's an interesting scene with a security guard in this episode.
Yeah, so there's this short scene where the psychologist is taking a break from the interview with Jamie,
Okay.
and she's talking to a security guard.
Yeah.
And they look really different,
Yeah.
And the security guard is talking about how he's not happy with his job. And it's just this quick moment, but it makes you wonder if that's part of what Jamie seeing,
Yeah.
Like this
Yeah.
world where everything is superficial and people are unhappy.
Yeah, like, is that confirming his worldview somehow?
Exact.
It's like
Yeah.
this tiny detail that just adds another layer.
Right.
So what happens in the last episode?
So the last episode takes us back to Jamie's family,
Okay.
and it's his dad's 50th birthday.
Wow, a birthday in the middle of all of this.
I know, it's kind of sad.
Yeah.
It's just the three of them now.
Yeah.
And they're trying to have this little celebration, but it's really strained.
Yeah, you can imagine.
Yeah. And then they discover that their van has been vandalized.
Oh, wow.
It's like people in the community have, spray painted it and stuff.
They're blaming the family.
Yeah. And it's this reminder that they're kind of ostracized now.
That's awful.
Yeah.
Oh.
So they decide to go to the hardware store to get supplies to clean it up.
Okay.
And on the way there, Eddie and Mandis start talking about when they were teenagers.
Oh, interesting. They tell this story about how they started dating.
Okay.
And it's just this really sweet, ordinary teenage love story.
And so different from what's happening now.
Right. And it just makes you think about, how different their teenage experience was from Jamie's.
And like, what are all the factors that contribute to that?
Yeah, like why is their kid, on this completely different path?
Such a good question.
And then at the hardware store, this guy recognizes Eddie.
Okay.
And he comes up to them and he's like, "Oh, I support Jamie."
What?
Yeah. And he says he's seen the pictures of the victim.
I
I know. And he even suggests starting a crowdfunding campaign to get Jamie a better lawyer.
That is so creepy.
It's really weird. And Eddie is just furious, but he's also trying to keep it together.
I bet Stephen Graham is amazing in that scene.
He's so good. You could just see all this anger and fear and panic bubbling up.
So it's like all this stuff is just coming to a head for him. Yeah. And that scene just brings up all these unanswered questions, Like, was Eddie too hard on Jamie?
Right.
Did he push him too much?
Away from his artistic interests, maybe?
Yeah.
And what about the mom, was she just not paying attention to what Jamie was doing online?
Right.
That's the thing. It's like, how can you be monitoring that all the time?
Exactly.
You can't be looking over their shoulder every second.
And the episode ends with this image of Eddie in Jamie's room.
Okay.
Jamie's not there, obviously. He's in juvenile detention.
Right.
And the computer is still there,
Yeah.
And Eddie's just weeping.
So powerful.
It is. And it's like the show just leaves you with all these questions.
And no easy answers.
Yeah, which is what makes it so good.
It would be too easy if they just tied everything up with a bow.
Right. But it also makes it really unsettling.
Yeah. It stays with you.
Yeah.
So why do you think this show is getting so much attention right now?
Well, I think part of it is just how well made it is.
Yeah, the single take format is just so innovative.
Yeah, it really pulls you in.
And the acting is incredible.
Oh, yeah.
You really believe all these characters.
And I think it's also just really hitting a nerve right now,
In terms of...
in terms of all this anxiety we have about kids and technology and social media.
Yeah, it's like, we all know it's a problem.
Right. But we don't really know what to do about it.
And it feels like the show isn't really trying to give us the answers.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about just showing us the problem in all its messiness.
Exactly. And it's not just a simple, cautionary tale about the internet.
Right.
It's about bigger issues, like how broken our society feels sometimes.
And how teenagers are trying to make sense of all that.
Yeah, and how they're reacting to it in these ways that we don't always understand.
And I think the fact that it doesn't offer any solutions is what makes it so powerful.
Yeah, it's forcing us to confront these really difficult questions.
Like, what is our responsibility as adults to these kids who are growing up in this world?
Right.
With all this technology that's changing everything so fast.
Yeah. And it makes you think about, where do we draw the line between, their online lives and their offline lives?
Because they're so blended now.
Yeah, and how much can we really control or influence how they see the world?
It's a show that definitely makes you think. Yeah. And I think that's why people are talking about it.
Yeah, it's not just entertainment. It's like it's starting a conversation.
And an important one.
Absolutely.